In this video, we're going to be explaining how to find the sum of this over here. This over here. Now, first of all, in our last video, we found out that this over here, the sum of this sequence over here is equal to 1 divided by 1 minus x. This over here is equal to x divided by 1 minus x squared. We're going to be needing to use both of these in this video. Now, first of all, this obviously is equal to this over here, and when we multiply it by x, we get this over here. Now, by subtracting these two again, like we did in our last video, we get that this is equal to we find out that the difference is equal to this over here, where we have 2n minus 1 times x to the n power. Now, since now we can separate this over here into two separate sequences. One with 2n times x to the n power, and subtracted by x to the n power. So these should look familiar because they're pretty much just these two equations over here, except you have to multiply this one by 2. So let's just write it down. This obviously is just going to be equal to 2x divided by 1 minus x squared minus 1 divided by 1 minus x minus 1. The reason we had to subtract by 1 because, well, because in our last video, again, you probably should watch that by now, that this over here is n is equal to 1. However, here we have n is equal to 0. It doesn't really matter for these two because where n is equal to 0 for this equation over here, and the integral is just going to be 0, so don't really need it. So the difference is just going to be equal to, give me a second, minus x, and the numerator is x squared plus x. Now, since we still have minus 1 minus x on this side, we're just gonna have to divide both sides by it. So our answer is that this is equal to, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to add a square there, my bad. 1 minus x to the third power, with the numerator being, well, x times x plus 1, which is pretty much the same thing as this, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. So there you go, there's our answer. Now we're going to have another method of doing this, which includes derivatives. Now, in this method, we're going to be taking the derivative of both sides of this equation. So let's do that. The derivative of this side is going to be equal to, same thing over here, where this is going to be n times x to the n minus 1 power, which is just the same thing as n squared times x to the n minus 1 power. And this over here, the derivative of that is equal to x times 1 minus x to minus 2 derivative. I didn't really take the derivative yet, I just turned it into this. Now, we're going to be using something called the product rule over here. Now, in the product rule, where we have probably shouldn't write it like that color. Wait a second. Now, in the product rule, if we have f times g derivative, and we have to find, well, the derivative, this is just the same thing as f derivative times g times, f times g derivative. So let's just apply that to here. We're going to get that this is equal to this over here, which is also just going to be equal to x plus 1 divided by 1 minus x to the third power. Now, since this over here is going to be equal to this, and this have a difference of x, we can just multiply both sides by x. After we multiply this side by x, or the left side by x, we get that. So just multiply this by x, and we're going to get that this is equal to x times x plus 1 divided by 1 minus x to the third power. The same thing as our last method. And there you go. That's our answer.